Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when Sir Michael Caine, one of the most respected actors of all time, walks onto The View and ends up in a fiery debate with Joy Behar about whether modern music is harming society? What began as a cheerful conversation about pop culture soon turned into one of the most emotional generational clashes daytime television has ever seen. It started simply enough. Joy asked Michael if he listens to any of today's hit artists. His reply? A polite but blunt, most of it sounds like noise pretending to be emotion. The audience gasped, Joy's eyebrows shot up, and within seconds, the studio shifted from laughter to tension. Michael spoke about lyrics losing heart, how music used to heal and inspire, not brag and divide. Joy fired back, saying that every older generation claims the next is lost, and that modern music reflects truth, not chaos. Whoopi tried to mediate. Sunny nodded thoughtfully, but the energy at the table kept tightening like a live wire. When Michael leaned in and said, "If this is what we call expression now, I fear for what comes next," the crowd fell silent. Joy's response made the room explode. By the end of the show, one thing was clear. This wasn't just about music. It was about what kind of world we're leaving behind. The episode began in its usual upbeat rhythm. The studio lights gleamed off the glossy red table of The View, and the audience clapped as the hosts introduced their guest, Sir Michael Caine, the legendary British actor with that unmistakable voice and gentlemanly charm. Today, Whoopi began with a grin, we're diving into a topic that always stirs things up. Music. Is modern music harmful to society compared to past generations? The crowd cheered. Music, after all, was something everyone had an opinion about. Joy Behar leaned forward, flashing her signature grin. And we've got Sir Michael Caine here who says today's music isn't quite what it used to be. I can't wait to hear this one. Michael chuckled, his tone warm but confident. Well, Joy, I've been around long enough to remember when a song could make a man cry, when words meant something, when they gave people hope. The audience hummed in interest, sensing something brewing. Joy tilted her head. You mean like Sinatra and all that? Exactly. Sinatra, Sam Cooke, Aretha Franklin, the Beatles. Their music spoke about love, loss, and longing. They brought people together. Now, half of what's on the radio feels like a contest to see who can shock the audience more. The audience gave a mixed response, some clapping in agreement, others chuckling uneasily. Sunny Hostin interjected, smiling. But Michael, isn't that the point of art? Every generation has its own language. Maybe what sounds like noise to you means something to them. Michael nodded politely. I agree to a point, Sunny. But there's a difference between expression and destruction. When the message turns from understanding to anger, we start losing the beauty of it. Joy raised her eyebrow. You think modern music is destructive? Michael leaned back, thoughtful. I think too much of it celebrates pain instead of healing it. A quiet murmur spread across the audience. Whoopi leaned forward, sensing where it was heading. That's a heavy statement, Sir Michael. He smiled faintly. It's not an attack, Whoopi. It's an observation. I hear songs that glorify violence, that turn heartbreak into mockery, that make young people believe they're better off numb than hopeful. That's not music. It's noise with a brand. Joy crossed her arms, intrigued but unimpressed. You sound like my grandfather when Elvis started shaking his hips. Every older generation thinks the next is ruining something. The crowd laughed, but Michael didn't take the bait. That may be true, he said with a wry grin, but maybe it's because we've seen what happens when people forget their roots. Music is supposed to connect the soul, not just sell records. Joy nodded slowly, but her tone stayed sharp. And yet, those records still make millions of people feel something. Maybe the problem isn't the music, it's how people listen to it. Sunny chimed in. That's an interesting point. We stream everything now. There's no shared experience, no family sitting around a radio or a record player. Maybe that's what we've lost. Michael appreciatively smiled. Exactly. When I was young, we'd sit together, listen to a song, and talk about what it meant. Now everyone's got headphones in and hearts closed. The audience gave a sympathetic awe, clearly resonating with the nostalgia. Joy leaned forward again. But Michael, come on. Every decade has had controversial music. The Rolling Stones, Madonna, Eminem, they all stirred things up. Society didn't fall apart. Michael's eyes twinkled. You're right, Joy. But those artists stirred things up, not down. They provoked thought, not emptiness. Whoopi laughed softly. That's poetic, Michael. But I think Joy's point is that art evolves. Maybe what feels empty to one generation feels liberating to another. Michael nodded, but his voice grew more intense. And maybe what feels liberating now will feel hollow later. I'm not saying music shouldn't change. I'm saying it shouldn't forget its heart. A melody can carry a nation through war. A lyric can heal a broken man. That's power. That's responsibility. The audience erupted in applause. Even Whoopi leaned back, impressed by the conviction in his words. Joy, never one to back down, smiled tightly. So, you think TikTok songs and pop hits are ruining society? Michael chuckled. Not all of them, but when every hit is about ego or excess, something's gone missing. The music used to lift you higher. Now it just makes you scroll faster. That line earned a wave of laughter and cheers. Even some of the younger audience members nodded in reluctant agreement. Joy tried to recover. Look, I get your point, but maybe the world itself is harsher now. Music's reflecting that. Maybe the chaos in the songs is just honesty. Michael looked at her for a long moment, his eyes kind but steady. Honesty's a gift when it helps someone see clearer, but when it blinds them, it's just noise in disguise. The air grew still again. The tension wasn't angry, it was thoughtful, electric. Whoopi sensed it and cut in before things got too heavy. Okay, she said, smiling. I think we can all agree on one thing. Music still makes people feel something, even if what they feel depends on the generation. Michael nodded, smiling faintly. I'll drink to that. Joy smirked. Water, I hope. The room burst into laughter again, easing the mood. But beneath the smiles and jokes, the sparks had already caught fire. The conversation wasn't just about music anymore. It was about what kind of values were being passed on through it, and everyone in that studio could feel that this debate was far from over.
The laughter had barely faded when Joy Behar leaned forward again, ready to strike the next spark. You know, Michael, she began, tapping her note card with her pen, you keep saying today's music has lost its heart, but maybe you're forgetting that people don't live in the same world you did. Life is faster, harder. Maybe music's just being honest about that. Michael adjusted his glasses, calm but deliberate. Honesty is good, Joy, but honesty without soul is just noise. It's like shouting truth into a void. The audience reacted with a quiet ooh, sensing the rising temperature. Joy smiled tightly. Oh, come on. You can't really compare Billie Eilish or Kendrick Lamar to Frank Sinatra. They're from totally different universes. Michael's eyes softened. You're right, they are. But that's the point, isn't it? Sinatra didn't need to shock you to move you. Billie Eilish shouldn't have to depress you to make you feel something. There's a difference between truth and despair. Sonny Hostin, ever the moderator, tried to ease the tone. Michael, don't you think part of what makes today's artists powerful is how open they are about mental health, pain, trauma? That's not despair, it's honesty about real life. Michael nodded respectfully. I admire that, truly. But we have to ask, does it help people heal from those things, or does it just make them dwell in them? The audience murmured again, some clapping softly, others shifting uneasily in their seats. Joy wasn't letting go. So you're saying music, songs about pain are dangerous? I'm saying, Michael replied, his voice steady but firm, music used to guide people through the pain. Now it too often sits in it. When a young man hears 50 songs about how nothing matters, he starts to believe it. That's not art, that's surrender. A few audience members clapped loudly, breaking the silence. Joy raised her hands in mock surrender. So now music's responsible for the downfall of society? Michael's response was immediate. No, but it reflects it. And reflection is powerful. You tell a generation they're broken long enough, they'll stop trying to fix themselves. That line landed like a punch. Even Whoopi looked impressed, raising her eyebrows. Joy, however, doubled down. But maybe they are broken, Michael. Maybe they just don't have the luxury of pretending things are fine like people did back in your day. Michael leaned forward slightly, his tone low and calm. We didn't pretend, Joy. We endured. We sang to remember that there was still something worth holding on to. That's what music did. It carried you when you couldn't carry yourself. The crowd burst into applause again, and for a moment Joy's expression faltered, but she quickly recovered. All right, that's poetic, I'll give you that. But don't you think nostalgia makes you biased? Every old song sounds better because it takes you back to a time you miss. Michael smiled faintly. That's possible. But nostalgia doesn't make a melody timeless. Meaning does. Sarah Haynes chimed in from the side. Can I just say there's something to both of your points? My daughter listens to songs that I don't even understand, but I see how much they mean to her. Maybe music today isn't meant for all of us to get. Michael nodded thoughtfully. That's fair, Sarah, but if music stops being something we can share across generations, it stops being universal. Art should connect, not divide. Joy leaned back, folding her arms. So you want everyone to go back to Frank Sinatra and Motown? That's not realistic. Michael chuckled softly. No, I just want people to remember that music isn't supposed to make you angrier at the world. It's supposed to help you face it. Joy tilted her head, a spark of frustration flickering. That sounds nice, but let's be honest. The world you came from was smaller, quieter. Today people are drowning in noise, news, stress, social media. Music reflects that chaos. Michael's reply was sharp, but controlled. Then maybe that's exactly why we need music with more peace in it. If everything's chaos, the answer isn't more chaos, it's clarity. The audience broke into applause again, and this time the sound lingered. Whoopi smiled knowingly. I feel like this is turning into a sermon. Michael grinned. Only if people need one. Joy rolled her eyes but smiled. You sound like a philosopher, not an actor. Maybe a bit of both, he said. When you've lived as long as I have, you realize the songs that stay with you aren't the ones that made you dance. They're the ones that made you remember who you were. The crowd went quiet, deeply listening now. Joy softened a little but still tried to keep control. You know, Michael, I grew up on Carole King and Joni Mitchell, but even they were called too emotional back then. Maybe we're just repeating the same cycle. Michael nodded. Perhaps. But those women wrote about heartbreak and hope in the same breath. They didn't glorify emptiness. They gave pain purpose. That's the difference. The audience erupted in applause again, and you could see even some of the crew members off stage nodding. Joy sighed dramatically. So basically, you're saying my playlist's ruining humanity. Michael laughed warmly. No, Joy, just that maybe your playlist could use a little Louis Armstrong. The room burst into laughter again, but the debate had clearly left its mark. Sonny leaned in, smiling. This is fascinating, honestly. What I'm hearing from Michael is that intention matters. What's the artist trying to do with his message? Heal or provoke? Michael nodded. Exactly. I don't mind provocation. It's part of art. But if every song leaves people emptier than before, what's the point? Joy sighed. You sound like you want music to be therapy. Michael smiled gently. It already is. We just stopped using it that way. For a moment there was silence, a rare stillness. Even Whoopi looked thoughtful, caught between pride and reflection. Whoopi leaned forward with a smirk. Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I think this is the calm before the storm. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to ask Michael about his comment that music now promotes despair, because something tells me Joy is not done with that one. Joy grinned mischievously. Oh, I'm just warming up. Michael chuckled, folding his hands. So am I. The audience laughed and applauded, the energy thick with anticipation. You could feel it. When the cameras came back,
Things were going to explode.
When the cameras came back from commercial, the tension was already sitting thick in the air. The audience had that charged silence that only comes before something real is about to happen. Whoopi smiled into the camera. "Welcome back to The View. Before the break, Michael Caine had some strong opinions about the moral decline in modern music. Joy, I believe you had something you wanted to say." Joy's tone sharpened. "Yeah, I do. Michael, with all due respect, when you say today's music promotes despair, it sounds like you're accusing an entire generation of giving up on hope. That's a big statement. Aren't you being a little dramatic?" Michael folded his hands, his gaze steady. "Not dramatic, Joy, just observant. You don't have to look far. Listen to what's being played. Every other song talks about loneliness, worthlessness, betrayal, over and over. It's like we've stopped believing in redemption." Joy tilted her head, eyebrows raised. "And you think that's new? Music's always been about heartbreak and pain. You're cherry-picking." Michael leaned forward. "I don't mind heartbreak, Joy. I mind hopelessness. There's a difference. In my day, when a man lost love, he sang about trying again. Now he just sings about giving up." The audience murmured in agreement. A few people clapped. Joy smirked. "So you want everyone to just sing about sunshine and daisies? Come on, Michael. The world's darker now. Maybe artists are just being real." Michael's voice dropped, low but firm. "Being real doesn't mean you stop reaching for light." There was a long pause. Then he added, "I lost my father when I was 15. I remember listening to Nat King Cole the night after his funeral. The song was 'Smile Though Your Heart Is Aching.'" His voice trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from memory. "That song didn't deny pain, it acknowledged it, but it also told me I'd survive it. That's the power of music with moral weight. It doesn't trap you, it lifts you." The room went still, the audience softened. Even Whoopi blinked, caught off guard by the rawness in her tone. Sonny leaned in. "That's beautiful, Michael. But don't you think some of today's songs do that, just in a different way?" He nodded. "Yes, some, but they're drowned out by the noise of anger, self-pity, and confusion. We've turned rebellion into a personality and pain into identity." Joy interjected, "But rebellion built half of music history. Elvis, the Beatles, punk, none of that was polite or moral." Michael smiled faintly. "True, but their rebellion had direction. Elvis wanted freedom. The Beatles wanted peace. Punk wanted honesty. Today's rebellion feels like it's against everything, including hope itself." The audience clapped again, louder this time. Joy sighed, crossing her arms. "You're sounding like you're blaming art for society's problems." "I'm not blaming it," Michael said softly. "I'm asking it to help." That landed hard. You could see even Whoopi nodding slightly, her eyes narrowing in thought. Joy, though, wasn't backing off. "You're romanticizing the past. Every generation thinks the next one is lost. Maybe we just express ourselves differently now. Maybe pain is the new hope." Michael tilted his head. "Pain can't be hope, Joy. Pain's the signal that hope's missing." The audience gasped quietly. He continued, voice thick with conviction. "We used to believe music could bring people back from the edge. Now we call it success if it just pushes them off beautifully." The crowd broke into applause again, and even some of the Woosts were stunned. Joy gave a small, tense smile. "That's a clever line, but I think you're out of touch. Young people today don't want to be told what's moral. They want authenticity, not sermons." Michael's expression softened. "And I understand that. But being authentic doesn't mean giving up on decency. If music has no boundaries, no values, then what separates it from noise? Art isn't just self-expression, it's shared expression. It should remind us we're connected." Sonny added gently, "But Michael, maybe what connects people now is their shared struggle. Not everyone relates to old-school optimism." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Then maybe we've made peace with being broken, and that's what frightens me most." That silence that followed was thick, heavy. You could feel it ripple through the studio like a wave. Joy finally broke it. "You really believe that modern artists are dangerous?" "No," Michael said simply. "I believe they're hurting. And we've stopped giving them something better to sing about. It was the kind of line that could end the conversation, but Joy leaned in, almost defensive now. "So what's your solution, Michael? Ban half the music on the charts?" Michael chuckled quietly. "No, Joy, just encourage better ones. Let's not glorify the darkness. Let's make room for the light again." The audience erupted in applause once more, this time standing. Joy rolled her eyes, clearly feeling the tide turn. Whoopi, sensing the heat rise again, looked at both of them. "All right, this is getting deep, but I think we're touching something real here. What happens when society stops caring about the message behind what we consume?" Joy muttered, "Or when old men start telling young people what to listen to." Michael smiled calmly. "If old men don't speak up, who will remind them what the world used to sound like when people believed in something?" The applause was thunderous now, and Joy's frustration was visible. The host tried to steer the conversation to commercial, but the air was still electric, thick with conviction and quiet challenge. Everyone could sense it. This wasn't over yet. The next round would push one of them to their limit. The studio lights felt almost too bright when they came back from the next break. The air had that strange quiet before a storm. Half the audience leaned forward in anticipation. The other half whispered about how intense things had gotten. Whoopi exhaled and looked between Joy and Michael. "All right, folks," she said with a half smile, trying to reset the mood. "We've been talking about modern music and morality. Let's keep it friendly, yeah?" Joy forced a polite grin, but her eyes said otherwise. She wasn't done. "So, Michael," she began, her tone sharp again, "you've basically said today's artists are hopeless and that we've lost our way. But let's be honest, you grew up in a world that wasn't exactly innocent either. Are you sure this isn't just nostalgia talking?" Michael gave a small chuckle. "Maybe nostalgia, maybe experience, but I've seen generations come and go. I know what it looks like when art builds people and when it breaks them." Joy scoffed. "Oh, come on. Art doesn't break people. Society does. Politicians, inequality, greed. Not a few sad songs on Spotify." Michael's calm cracked for the first time. "And what do you think feeds society's soul, Joy? It's culture. It's music. The words we repeat become the thoughts we live by." The audience clapped again, louder this time. Joy's smile tightened. She shot back, "So you've basically said today's artists are hopeless and that we've lost our way. But let's be honest, you grew up in a world that wasn't exactly innocent either. Are you sure this isn't just nostalgia talking?" "You sound exactly like every bitter old man who can't stand that the world moved on without him." The words hung heavy in the air. Whoopi's head turned sharply toward Joy. "Whoa, Joy!" But Michael didn't flinch. He just stared at her, eyes steady but sad. "Maybe, but at least I'm still listening to the world, Joy. You've just started shouting over it." The crowd gasped, then burst into half applause, half stunned silence. Joy blinked, clearly rattled. "Excuse me?" Michael stayed calm but firm. "You talk about freedom of expression, but the second someone disagrees with you, you call them outdated. Maybe that's what's wrong with all this noise. You can't hear anything but yourself." Now the studio erupted. Applause thundered. Whoopi tried to speak, but gave up. Joy stood up slightly, her voice rising. "I'm not going to sit here and be insulted on my own show, Michael. You don't know me. You don't know what I've fought for." Michael shook his head. "You're right, I don't. But I do know that respect is something you don't demand. It's something you earn. And when you mock the past just to glorify the present, you lose both." Joy froze. For a long, uncomfortable moment, she didn't respond. Her eyes darted toward the audience, then back to Michael. You could see her pulse in her neck. Whoopi, always the peacekeeper, tried to step in. Okay, let's cool this off a little. We're getting deep, and I think everyone needs a breather." But Joy didn't back down. "No, Whoopi, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of men sitting here acting like moral gatekeepers, telling us what's pure and what's poison. Maybe we don't need protecting from our own culture." Michael rose slightly from his chair, not angry, but powerful, controlled. Then maybe, Joy, that's why so many feel lost, because we've convinced ourselves that feeling anything deeply is weakness. The audience erupted again, cheers, gasps, a few standing claps. Joy threw up her hands, exasperated. "Oh, please, you act like Spotify is the apocalypse. It's music, not a moral crisis." Michael nodded. And maybe if we treated it with the reverence it once had, our kids wouldn't be so desperate to fill the silence. For the first time all show, Joy had no retort. The silence that followed was deafening. Whoopi looked to the camera, her voice soft but serious. "We'll be right back after the break." As the lights dimmed, Joy leaned back, fuming quietly. Michael looked out at the crowd, his expression unreadable. You could almost hear it in the studio's hush. They'd both said more than they intended, and neither was finished. When the show returned from its final break, the tension in the room hadn't disappeared. It had only changed shape. The audience was quieter now, less entertained and more curious about what would happen next. The air felt thick, like everyone knew they'd just watched something that wouldn't fade once the cameras stopped rolling. Whoopi cleared her throat, her voice calm but firm. "All right, we're back on The View. Before we close, I think it's fair to say we've had, one of the most passionate conversations this table's ever seen." A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the crowd. Joy was still visibly tense, her arms crossed, her smile tight. But Michael Caine, steady as ever, looked composed, almost gentle. Whoopi turned toward him. "Michael, I think you should finish your thought. You were saying something about music and reverence?" Michael nodded slowly. "Yes, I just believe we've lost touch with how powerful music used to be, when it carried values, when it gave people a sense of belonging and purpose. It wasn't about policing creativity. It was about protecting meaning." He looked out toward the audience. "We used to gather around the radio as families. Songs didn't just fill the room, they filled the heart. Now we listen alone, through headphones, and wonder why the world feels colder." The crowd applauded, softly at first, then louder. Joy exhaled and finally leaned forward. "You know, Michael, I might not agree with you, but I get what you're saying. It's just hard for me to believe that the answer lies in going backward." Michael smiled faintly. "Not backward, Joy, just remembering where we came from." That softened her. The edge in her tone faded, replaced by something more reflective. "Maybe that's the real debate, not whether music's moral, but whether we still know what it means to share values anymore." The studio went quiet again, but this time it wasn't tense, it was thoughtful. Sonny spoke next, voice calm and warm. "I think that's the core of it. Every generation finds its own way to express what it's going through. Maybe modern music isn't immoral, it's just honest about how lost people feel." Michael nodded. "That's fair, but maybe what people need from art isn't a mirror, it's a compass." That line drew a low hum of agreement from the audience. Joy tilted her head, finally meeting Michael's eyes with a small smile. "You've got a way with words, I'll give you that." He chuckled lightly. "So I've been told. Comes from listening to good lyrics for 70 years. Whoopi grinned. "Well, I think we can all agree this has been one for the books. Michael, Joy, thank you both for keeping it real." The audience clapped again, the tension finally breaking into warm applause. A few people even stood up. Michael extended a hand toward Joy. For a brief second she hesitated, but then she took it. The crowd cheered at the gesture. Joy laughed softly, shaking her head. "You know what, Michael? Maybe I'll try some Nat King Cole tonight, just to see what all the fuss is about." Michael smiled. "And maybe I'll give Taylor Swift a listen. Fair trade." That got a real laugh from everyone at the table. Even Whoopi let out a genuine "Lord help us all." As the closing music started to play, the camera panned out. The hosts leaned in together, the way they always did when the credits rolled. But this time, there was a different energy, one that felt like mutual respect instead of rivalry. Michael waved to the audience, his expression calm and content. Joy looked toward him one last time, her tone lighter. "All right, Sir Michael, next time you come on this show, bring a playlist. We'll debate track by track." He winked. "Deal." The credits rolled over applause that seemed to last a little longer than usual. Later that day, social media lit up with clips of the exchange. One tweet read, "Michael Caine just schooled the View on what music used to mean, and he did it with class." Another countered, "Joy Behar stood her ground. Music evolves because life evolves. Stop romanticizing the past." But the most viral post came from a viewer who wrote, "It wasn't about music. It was about remembering what connects us." And both of them were right. By nightfall, the segment had over 10 million views on YouTube. The debate over music, morality, and meaning was everywhere. But underneath the noise, people were really talking about something deeper, the values we've lost, and whether art still has the power to bring them back. And as the clip replayed on late-night news and reaction channels, one thing became clear. Sometimes the loudest moments on television are the ones that make the world stop and think. If you enjoyed this powerful moment, the narrator's voice closed over the outro clip, make sure to subscribe for more celebrity clashes, emotional showdowns, and unforgettable TV moments. Drop a comment below. Has modern music lost its soul, or are we just not listening closely enough?